What is going on, everybody? I am back. We're going to take our look at the initial Mariners 26-man roster today. Go over kind of some of the upside to it, some of the downside. Not going to do like a record projection or anything like that. I'm biased. I think this team can win the division. I think they can make the playoffs. I'd still have the Astros as the favorites, but I think this team is capable. But let's get into it. Let's look at the roster. Again, trades could still happen. We still have a few days until opening day. Thursday's opening day. So a lot could change between, not a lot, but a couple things could change between now and Thursday. There's maybe someone that was DFA'd somewhere else that could be added to the roster. But as of right now, this is the initial 26-man roster that more than likely they will go into opening day with on Thursday and begin the season with. So no real surprises whatsoever. I think if you were to ask most people to project the roster, this is what they would have had. First two things, obviously, Taylor Trammell and Dylan Moore will more than likely, they're still on the roster. They will go on the injured list to start the year. Good news, it sounds like from Scott Service that Dylan Moore should be back by mid-April. That's really, really important when we look into this roster and we look how it is. Dylan Moore is going to be kind of a necessity for this team if they want to, make a run. They need that right-handed bat, especially when they have two middle infielders that are both left-handed. It's going to come in handy to have Dylan Moore there. Let's first look at the bullpen. Again, no surprises. You've got Matt Brash, Diego Castillo, Matt Festa, Chris Flexen, Trevor Gott, Andres Munoz, Penn Murphy, and Paul Sewald in the bullpen. Only difference from last year is Eric Swanson's obviously in Toronto. Trevor Gott essentially fills that position left by Swanson. Other than that, it's the same bullpen as last year. With bullpens can be weird year to year. We've seen plenty of bullpens that have been amazing and dropped off and had rough seasons. You can have really good peripherals as a bullpen, great strikeout numbers, but sometimes you're just getting unlucky with hits and things like that. It's you don't pitch a lot of innings. It's an inning at a time, so a lot can happen in one inning. You don't have that 5-6 innings a night to kind of even things out. So on paper, this bullpen looks really good, and it should be. It's young enough. There's enough upside to it. But I'm never going to come on and say, guaranteed that a bullpen is dominant. Bullpens just aren't like that. They can fluctuate year to year. But everything would point to this being a really strong unit for the Seattle Mariners. You've got some good veterans with Sewald and Castillo, and some really good young arms too with Munoz, Brash. And you kind of got Festa, Murphy, and Gott kind of in the middle there. All guys that are more than capable and good relievers, to get big outs as well. Paul Sewald didn't have a very strong spring. Thought he struggled a little bit at the end of last year too. But if you go back to last year, he didn't have a great spring either. And the previous year, he had struggled at the end of the year. So I think Sewald will be fine. Diego Castillo can have hot and cold streaks as well. And I would be a little nervous about some of that maybe, but I think you've got enough young arms behind them with Brash and Munoz, even, Festa and Murphy to an extent. And you've got some guys in the minors too. The guy they got for Walton from San Francisco, Baroa, I think it is. So you've got him down there. You got a couple other arms that could come up if necessary, if some guys do struggle, and some guys will. It's going to happen. This roster's not going to be the same 26 throughout the year. But I think there's enough depth in the bullpen that if a couple guys do maybe struggle a little bit, you should have enough guys down there to make up for it. Chris Flexen's in the bullpen to start the year. Good long guy. Star struggles, he can eat up innings. Also nice to have as a sixth starter. There's going to be double headers. There's going to be starts that need to be missed. Maybe not guys on the injured list, but who knows? Maybe, you never know. Logan Gilbert has to miss start. Even George Kirby, I know they want to limit his innings a little bit. Flexen can slide in there and make the start. I still think it's possible Flexen's traded before opening day. Team that needs some starter depth could do that. But I think, the Mariners, too, also like the fact that they have Flexen for that depth. You've got it to help Kirby limit the innings. You've got it if Marco Gonzalez struggles. And it gives you that long guy to the pen that can soak up innings on nights the starter is off. So, from both ways, it makes sense. I could see him traded. But I could also see them liking that depth there and holding on to Chris Flexen. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But right now, Flexen is on the team. Starting rotation, I think, is one of the best starting rotations in the league. This team should be really good at run prevention. You've got Luis Castillo will be the opening day starter, no shock there. Robbie Ray will go 2. Logan Gilbert, Marco, and Kirby will round out the 5. Kirby's probably your second best pitcher, in my opinion. Close between him and Robbie Ray. But they do want to limit Kirby's innings a little bit. I think he doubled last year his career high in innings. Apologize if I have to grab sips of water here. So it makes sense. You know, the Mariners did that with Felix Hernandez his first season. I get it. And at the end of the day, pitching rotation order doesn't matter a whole lot. These things get jumbled throughout the year. There'll be days when they have a day off and they'll skip somebody. Maybe there's a day when Luis Castillo just needs an extra day of rest and they'll move somebody up. So these things get moved around so much that the order of the rotation, to be honest, doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You know, I know people get really hung up on that. It's a cool honor to be an opening day starter, definitely, I think, for players. But once it goes through the rotation once, it doesn't really matter. These guys are all going to hopefully make 32, 34 starts for this team. Like I said, I'll put this rotation up against anybody. I don't have all the rotations in front of me, so I'm sure you guys can come on here and say, oh, no, this team's better. Not saying they're the best, but I will put this rotation up against anybody. It's extremely deep. It's got some guys that I think could be Cy Young contenders. I think Luis Castillo could be a Cy Young contender. Robbie Ray is only 2 years removed from his Cy Young. And I think George Kirby is a sleeper pick for a Cy Young. Do I think he's going to win it? Not necessarily, but I think he's got the stuff. And you look at the numbers last year, doesn't walk anybody, misses a lot of bats to be a Cy Young contender. And then you've got Marco Gonzalez in the middle there. I know Mariners fans kind of hop on Marco, and he's not great, but he's a fifth starter. I know he's technically the 4, but he's a fifth starter. He's a fine back into the rotation pitcher. He's a guy that can give you some innings when you need it. And he's fine. Marco Gonzalez is perfectly fine. He's going to give you that 4.02 ERA, maybe high 3s, low 4s ERA. He's going to give you innings. He is totally fine as the back end rotation starter. He's not an ace. He's not being asked to be an ace in this rotation. So he is perfectly fine. There's a lot of people that would kill to have a fifth starter like Marco. So no problem with him being in there. Yeah, like I said, I'll put this rotation up against anybody. You know, the upside is certainly there. I think Robbie Ray gets thought of as not having a great year last year, and it certainly wasn't as good as his Cy Young season. Go back and look at the numbers, though. Robbie Ray actually had a pretty good year, and I think that postseason start against Toronto kind of leaves people with a bad taste in their mouth. But overall, Ray was certainly solid, especially after he added that 2-seamer, kind of got off to a rough start. Then he had a stretch there where he was fantastic. And his velocity was looked like it was up a little bit in the spring. So if that's the case, then Robbie Ray, you know, and now not being the number 1, kind of getting to take a step back. I think you've got a really good 1-2 punch with Castillo and Ray as the veterans, and the 2 young guys, Gilbert and Kirby. I like Kirby a little bit better. I just think his upside is higher. Logan's more of a fly ball pitcher. You know what I mean? Like, it leads to more home runs and stuff like that. But Gilbert was fantastic last year. He was great in his first postseason start, as was George Kirby. And now they have a year under their belt of experience. So I'm super excited about this rotation. You know, to me, like I said, bullpens can come and go. So there's things that could happen where the bullpen just struggles. To me, with the rotation, as long as it's healthy, it's hard for me to see it being a weak spot. And that's the pitching in general. I'd be very shocked that this pitching is not a very strong suit of the Seattle Mariners. They actually have pretty good depth. You know, you got Chris Flexen there as your 6th starter. The bullpen's got some depth. If, you know, Sewald and Castillo aren't able to, maybe they struggle, you can put Brash and Munoz maybe in those kind of roles and have the other guys take a step back. So the depth is there. Everything is there for this to be an outstanding pitching staff. I'd be shocked if it's not one of the better run prevention staffs, including starters and bullpen in the major leagues. Let's get to the skill positions, the offense, essentially. Catchers is going to be 2. It depends on what you view Cooper Hummel as. The official website has him as an outfielder, so he's kind of a jack of all trades. Tom Murphy and Cal Raleigh, obviously. I'll go through it, then we'll talk a little bit about the roster. Infielders, you've got J.P. Crawford, Ty France, Eugenio Suarez, and Colton Wong. Outfielders, you've got Sam Haggerty, Teoscar Hernandez, Cooper Hummel, Jared Kelenic, A.J. Pollock, Julio Rodriguez. Like I said, Dylan Moore and Taylor Trammell will be put on the injury list. And then you've got infielder, outfielder, DH Tommy La Stella is likely going to be, will make this team as well out of spring training. There's a lot of good positional flexibility the Mariners have. I know a lot of people want them to sign kind of a more steady DH, and I did too. I was hoping they could maybe add someone that could really fill that role. My light keeps going down here. Let me turn that back up. But we don't know really, it's always hard with trades to say who was out there and who wasn't. We don't necessarily know who was available. There may have been some guys that were available, but the team, just the asking price is too high. Guys like Brian Reynolds. I'm sure the Pirates wanted some combination of Kelenic, Kirby, Gilbert, something like that would have been a hard thing to do. And it's hard to trade your own guys. It's hard to trade guys that have come up in your system because you've got that connection to them as well. So, and as far as free agents, again, it's always hard to say who wants to come here and who doesn't. I know fans want to trade Turner, but Shannon Drayer was talking about the other day that he wanted to play closer to home and wanted to play with Bryce Harper again. So it wasn't really an option for him to come to Seattle. That those things happen too. But they do have good position. They can use that DH. They've got a lot of options with it. Cal Raleigh can DH when he's not catching. Tom Murphy can 100% DH, especially against lefties. He mashes lefties. Teoscar Hernandez can DH, and AJ Pollock can play right field, or Jared Kelenic can play right field. When they need days off, Suarez will DH. Julio can DH. Kelenic can DH. Ty France can DH on his off days. Tommy LaStella can play first base. Tommy LaStella can DH. When he gets healthy, Dylan Moore can DH against lefties. Colton Wong can DH against a righty when Dylan Moore is playing the field, or Sam Haggerty's in the infield. So there's actually a lot of options this team has. I'm not too worried about the DH position because they're going to kind of use it as a roving DH. I apologize for that light keep going down. And that's fine. Like, they've got the roster that can do that. They really do. They can move a lot of guys around and play different positions with them. Like I said, there's going to be days, Kelenic can play left, Paul can play right, and Teoscar Hernandez can DH. When Dylan Moore gets back, he can play right field. Sam Haggerty can play out there. Hernandez can DH. Paul can DH against lefties. Murphy can DH against lefties. Cal Raleigh's going to need days off. He can DH, especially against righties. So there's a lot of things this team can do. Cooper Hummel, Cooper Hummel can DH, and Cooper Hummel can catch, so Cal Raleigh can DH when Tom Murphy's catching, because you have Cooper Hummel there to be the emergency catcher, because you can't have the DH come in, play catcher without losing the pitcher spot. So, that's a word salad there, but you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of guys here that can DH. Now, they got a lot of guys that can do it. Hopefully they can all do it well. That's going to be the key here. I don't think the issue is going to be the lack of people that can do it. It's going to be hopefully they can get good numbers from that spot. And I think that's what they're banking on, is putting all these guys together and moving them around. They will still get good production out of that designated hitter spot. Like I said, and I forgot about Cooper Hummel in there. He can DH certainly as well. Like I said, really good positional flexibility. And having that catcher, third catcher essentially with Hummel, allows you to use Murphy and Raleigh in that DH role when they're not catching. So that's huge for this team as well. It's the pitching staff is certainly, I think, deeper than this lineup. Obviously, I think you have a legitimate MVP candidate in Julio in center field. That's huge. This season could end and we could be saying Julio's the best player in baseball. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. He's already, I think, top 10 by most people's metrics and eyes. So you've got someone out there that can do it. Hopefully Ty France is more first half Ty France this year a little bit, but he had some injuries too. Struggled a little bit in the second half of the year. It wasn't bad, but just wasn't quite as good. And hopefully they can get that same production out of Eugenio Suarez that they got last year as well. I think you kind of know what you're going to get from J.P. Crawford and Colton Wong. They're solid. They're not going to be your offensive juggernauts, but they can do enough offensively. Hopefully Cal Raleigh is giving you what he gave you last year. That's going to be huge. And I think the biggest key for the Mariners is going to be Jared Kelenic. If, the spring holds up and Kelenic takes off, then the sky is the limit for this team. Jared Kelenic playing up to what his prospect billing is or was makes this team, in my eyes, a World Series contender. Because then you've got Julio, Kelenic, Raleigh. You put all this together, this lineup is really deep with this pitching staff. If Jared Kelenic struggles, then you've got to make some things happen. You've got to have, Dylan Moore be ready to play left field when he comes back. AJ Pollock, is he your everyday left fielder? Is Cooper Hummel? Does, when Taylor Trammell gets back, who knows when that's going to be? Is he a guy that can go out there? Do you have to make a trade? So Jared Kelenic's going to be really key, which is scary because he hasn't shown it yet in the big leagues and in his 2 seasons up. But he's still, how old is Jarred Kelenic? Look it up right here. I have it. Jarred Kelenic is 23. He'll be 24 in June. This is still a really young player. It's not like some 29-year-old that's been in the big leagues 5 seasons and has yet to produce results. He's had not even 2 full seasons. He's probably had, honestly, put all his bats together, maybe a year plus of at-bats. I don't know exactly. I don't have the numbers in front of me. So it's not crazy that Jarred Kelenic develops and is a really good player. He showed signs last September of looking better. He's had a great spring training. Spring training doesn't necessarily mean a lot, but it's certainly better than Jarred Kelenic having a bad spring training for sure. So that's going to go a long way for this team, is what they get from Jarred Kelenic. He is probably the X factor. I don't want to put that on him. Not that he's watching this, but I don't want to put all that pressure on him. It's not like it's necessarily doomed if he struggles, but he, to me, is really like that X factor. I think we kind of know, as I drop my pen, what we're going to get from everybody else on this team. He's probably the one guy that is the wild card. Now, there's other things too. If Suarez takes a step back, if Cal Raleigh takes a step back, things like that. Ty France struggles. AJ Pollock's not good. La Stella's not good. There are things that could happen to this team that even with Kelenic doing well would hurt, but it would also mitigate some of that. If Kelenic is good, then you can live with some of that other stuff potentially. Dylan Moore getting healthy is really, really important to the depth of this team. And like I said, really good news that Scott said mid-April. Now, I don't know if that means back mid-April or if he meant getting back to baseball activities mid-April. Either way, mid to late April, early May is good. I will take that. There can always be setbacks, so nothing's set in stone yet here, but still a good sign. They need Dylan Moore healthy because Dylan Moore is the platoon answer for JP, for Colton Wong. Neither of those guys hits lefties particularly well. Now, obviously, he can't play both positions. At some point, Crawford and Wong are going to have to hit lefties. But in the beginning of the year, they're 100% going to have to hit lefties unless, Sam Haggerty, who hit lefties pretty good last year, comes in there. You do have some bench bats, like you could have Tom Murphy pinch hit in late situations, but having Dylan Moore really offers that flexibility there. So getting Dylan Moore back is going to be really, really important for this roster. And when you do get him back, you've got, like I said, I wouldn't call this an offensive juggernaut necessarily, but you've got a lot of good pieces. You've got some really strong bats. Ty France, Eugenio, Teoscar Hernandez, Julio, and Cal Raleigh in the middle of that order. And hopefully Jarred Kelenic as well. JP Crawford, Colton Wong are solid. Like, is JP going to light the world on fire? No, but if he's hitting ninth and he's giving you a 712 OPS, that's okay with good defense. And Colton Wong, if he can be an improvement over Adam Frazier, which he should be, that's going to go a long way as well for this team. So you've got, I don't want to say you have great depth because you don't have great depth necessarily in the minors, but you've got in-house depth that can help. Like I said, you've got good position flexibility here, guys that can play around and help out. So you do have that in-roster flexibility. Like I said, the depth isn't great, especially with Taylor Trammell being hurt. That definitely hurts a little bit. He's kind of your Jarred Kelenic fallback, essentially. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I do like this lineup. I do think it's deep. I do think you have, like I said, I love the flexibility. I know I've said that a bunch of times that they have. So, listen, I'm a biased Mariners fan. I think this team can win a World Series. I do. I do think it's possible. I do think it's possible a couple things go wrong, and this team is definitely fighting for its playoff life as well. So, I mean, it can certainly go both ways. I do think they make the playoffs. I do have the Astros still just a little bit above them. I think it's going to be a closer race. I don't think it's going to be the 16-game difference, but I do think the Astros, they just have that little bit more depth that the Mariners lineup needs. But the Astros have lost some people too. Altuve is going to be out for a while. I think McCullers is out for a while. They've lost Justin Verlander. So there are some ways that the Mariners can definitely shrink in that gap and make this interesting. So, and you have teams in the division too. Texas is a lot better. The Angels kind of seem like it every year, but anytime you've got Trout and Ohtani, you can't count that team out, of being competitive. So should be a good season, should be a fun season. Yeah, that's all I've got on that. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications for these type of videos if you want to see more. I'm going to do my best to go live for as many Mariner games as possible. I should have post-game recaps up for just about every game, so stick with me. This is going to be a fun season. We're going to go through it. I'm not going to do season predictions. I don't do that. I don't know. It just, to me, I just don't do predictions. I know they get clicks and views, but it's just not really my thing. But we will be talking Mariners and certainly going in depth on them all season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.